Thank you, Anton, for joining. First off, I suppose would be great to get a little bit about your background, Anton, and how you joined Talos.
Sure. Yeah. And thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. It's funny, the slide you flashed with the users of Canton Coin Network. Two of those are my ex-employers. So start off my career in TradFi, as a lot of people here did. I was at Deutsche Bank for about 13 years and then moved on to JP Morgan. And then made a switch over to crypto in 2022 or so. So fairly late in the cycle. Started working at a small cryptocurrency broker as a product manager on trading, and then have since been at Talos for about 3 years. So that's essentially my journey. I'm a product manager at Talos, focusing mainly on post-trade and DeFi, and has been fortunate enough to work and launch our super validator on the Canton Network.
Great. Well, that leads into my second question, which is that many people here today won't necessarily know about what Talos does for institutions. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So Talos is the sales pitch is we're a digital asset trading platform, but I think that's a little bit outdated because we do so much more than that. So Talos started in 2018 as essentially an OAMS. So idea was to help institutional clients trade in a more effective manner. Right. So at that point, liquidity was very scattered. Obviously, you had different prices, and you still do today. Not just there's less disconnect now, but back then there's so many liquidity providers all streaming different prices. And Talos's goal was to normalize all of that for our clients and allow them to more effectively get liquidity from the market. Over the years, we've sort of ended, we've added on the end caps of that equation. So now we power the full end-to-end cycle of digital asset trading. So now we have a pre-trade product, so allowing clients to determine what they should trade. Obviously, our execution layer is still the bread and butter of Talos. We have connectivity to 90 plus venues, and these are exchanges, LPs, custodians, DeFi even. So again, we are still very focused on actually allowing clients to get liquidity from the markets. And then we have a very strong post-trade offering now, which I cover, and I lead that vertical. But that's essentially allowing clients to manage their assets and manage the operational and portfolio levels once the trade has actually been made. So again, in my mind, I sort of split it between pre-trade, trade execution, and then post-trade. And then Talos is across all of those. And over the summer, we acquired a company called Coinmetrics, which gave us, that was the last missing piece to our equation, and that's data. So now we have, on-chain data, yeah, I think at this point we're sort of the full end-to-end solution for institutions to engage with.
And Anton, could you tell us a little bit about Talos's view on why Canton's important and what you're doing on it? And also, I overused the word systemically important, but I'd be really interested in your view on that in terms of Canton.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of nodding on the previous slides off camera, obviously, but I'll throw in a couple of use cases there. And our first engagement with Canton was actually in the spring. I still remember getting a call with Eric and Masha. Right. Shout out to Masha, by the way, fellow Eastern European and Eastern European food lover as well. So I remember it was a very short call, but I think the two use cases that Eric gave me really resonated, and it's almost like one of those mythical light bulb moments where it's like, yes, we should be doing this. And it's really the privacy aspect of it, right? And I think you've touched on it already, but a very simple use case that I could think of is, and that Eric brought up, is imagine you wanted to pay your employees in stablecoin, right? It's a very, very simple use case. There's no way to do that today without everybody seeing how much everybody else is making, right? There's such a simple thing that you cannot achieve on the existing rails, right, pre-Canton. And the second portion, again, that's really exciting to us is the settlement. So again, Talos, powers interactions between institutions, and settlement by far is a bilateral activity, meaning that we trade with each other and then we have to settle with each other, right? There is no concept of a centralized clearing DTCC, like as you would in TradFi markets. So those settlement transfers, again, are currently very public. And if you really wanted to, and I'm sure there's places that do this, you can actually gauge sort of the settlement flows between the various counterparties. And that information obviously is not something that you want out there, because that could allow interested parties to understand your trading volumes. They can gauge your revenues from that. They can understand what your trading strategies are based on the assets that you're settling as well. So a lot of that stuff that's public should really not be public, and is not public in TradFi markets. So again, I'm stealing a quote from Eric, but in this case, the transparency of blockchain is almost a bug and not a feature. And Canton addresses part of that.
Yeah, we all steal quotes from Eric. That's for don't that. And then what are your clients' views on Canton and their adoption patterns, to whatever extent you can talk about it?
Yeah, so largely across across two verticals again, and our Super Validator application really focused on two things, and that's unlocking the liquidity of the Canton Coin itself, which again I'm happy to talk to, and the second piece, which is a longer term, that's the settlement aspect that I spoke about. So our institutional clients are hyper focused on both of those things, right? So our goal with the Super Validator application was to essentially say we will help grow the adoption of the network through increased liquidity of Canton Coin, which we did support, through the listings process that happened 2 weeks ago on Perps, and then this week on Spot. And then going forward, and this is something we're piloting now with a couple of our clients, they absolutely have the appetite to move their public settlements into a private sort of chain. So I think both of those verticals are extremely interesting for our institutional clients. And I mentioned this before, but Talos is a purely institutional platform. We have over 200 plus clients, but these are blue chip names that are not, small mom and pop shops. We're dealing with some of the largest institutional clients in the world.
Yeah, and I think that sort of answers my next question, which is that how is Talos helping institutions to adopt Canton? They're what you're describing sounds like they're almost crying out for it, if that's not strong.
Yeah, definitely. So definitely on the liquidity front, it was from our perspective, we were preparing for the listing, obviously taking from a tech perspective. We were trying to get all our internal ducks in a row, making sure that we can support it once it goes live. We had no idea, obviously this is private information, on when the listings would actually happen. The funniest thing to me is that we've had inbounds from our clients asking us, when is this happening? Have you heard anything? So there was definitely sort of appetite and this pressure that was building up in our clients, where they were expecting us to list the coin as soon as it's available. And we are, again, I can't speak to the volumes, obviously, but we've had the spot listing on Monday, and we've seen some very healthy volumes. I checked this morning. I was honestly surprised at how much our clients have traded.
Nice. That's and I suppose on my final question on a personal note. So how's it been? Behind the scenes supporting the go live of Canton Coin across exchanges.
Yeah, I mean, part of it is BAU. I mean, obviously Talos being sort of in the center of between all the various counterparties, like we are sort of used to this. But it was still kind of interesting because there was a specific deliverable that we had to meet as part of our Super Validator application. So I'll tell hopefully a funny story. Monday morning, we were sort of ready to go. We were monitoring when the exchanges would actually launch the network, and we were all prepared. We've obviously been preparing for this for a couple of weeks. And my CTO comes over to me and he's like, "Are we ready?" I'm like, "Yes, we're ready." And he's like, "Okay, how long do we have after the coin launches to actually list it per our commitment as a Super Validator?" So I tell him it's 5, and he's like, "Okay, 5, we could do it." And I'm saying it's 5 business days. That's what's in our application. And he just looks at me. He's like, 5 business days? I thought it was 5 minutes. So that just sort of shows you sort of the standard of Talos, and what we're sort of the the delivery at which we're used to operating. So he had this in his mind. He had this full understanding that we would support Canton within 5 minutes on launch. I'm happy to say that it was actually much quicker than that. I think as soon as it launched across 4 different exchanges, our clients were immediately able to trade it within less than a minute. So yeah.
There's one thing that you've touched on a couple of times and I haven't picked up on, but could you talk a little bit about what it means to be a super validator on Canton and what that means for Talos and how that works?
Yeah, so super validators, I think there's a lot of different paths to becoming super validator, and there's a lot of different values that each super validator brings, right? The Coin Metrics, which is the company that we acquired, they actually have they brought their own super validator, so they were a super validator on Canton before acquisition, and they really deliver value through data. So they actually have released a Canton Intelligent application over the summer. I'm not sure if it's a featured app or not, but they have been really essentially providing the value to the network in that way. For us, as again a trading shop primarily, the 2 verticals we're primarily exploring and through which we aim to provide the data is increased adoption of Canton Coin as a sort of liquidity and as a token, and then, as I mentioned, facilitating a lot of those settlement activities that our clients are currently doing. We want to move them to Canton, right? And we want to work with our clients and build tools that they need for them to actually settle on Canton versus, bilaterally as they do today. That's essentially, again, that's the main 2 ways in which Talos is looking to add value.
Anton, thank you very, very much for that. Real pleasure to have you here today.